Hello, so after a couple of days of playing the Dragon's Valley map, it's time to have a look at it, see what I think. So this is the small version of Dragon's Valley, which is effectively Nosehair Canals, or Nosehair Canals as I like to call it. The first thing you'll notice playing this is that it's not a straight remake of the Battlefield 3 version. It's actually larger. Central region with the containers is about the same size, but the width of some of the roads and the gaps around the map are actually bigger. It does suffer from all the problems that the smaller team deathmatch maps have. You can get mortared, you can get UCAV'd, you can get SUAV'd far too easily. You can actually mortar the spawn locations because the spawns in this map aren't great, but the spawns in the original weren't great either. What this map could really do with is some roofs that can't be destroyed. The building at this end that you spawn in, the roof can be destroyed by the mortars, and so then they just drop straight into the spawn. But because this map has the central area with all the containers and it's got the wider, longer lanes around the outside, it does mean you can use a variety of guns. So you can get away with using something like the AN-94 or a sniper rifle or a DMR on the outside lanes. If you're spawning on the top level, then the sniper rifles and the LMGs are just an obvious choice. There is really no kind of middle ground. Sure, you can use an assault rifle, but you often get outgunned on the longer lanes, and if you go into the middle, well, shotguns are king. Even I can go on a streak with a shotgun down here. Now the PDWs are good as well, but it's not often you can get 6 or 7 kills without reloading with a PDW. Whereas with the shotguns you can often one bang because you're incredibly close ranges. You know, down here even I can turn and headshot somebody with a shotgun. So for team deathmatch, this small version of the map is really good. It's not as good as the Battlefield 3 version of it, and that's just because of those outside lanes. They're just too big. The gaps are just too wide. What you could get across in a little bit of a sprint and a jump, you're now out in the open for a lot longer, and it's very easy to get sniped. So now on to the big version of the map. So this is Dragon Valley proper, and what I would say is if you like playing as just infantry, then this is the running simulator, because this map is huge. The distances between flags and objectives is just massive. The central island is a good place for infantry fights. Well, I'll put that down to the main temple is the best place for infantry fights. It's got some indestructible walls around it, so you're not going to get tank shelled from across the map, and you can also get some cover from the helicopters. In fact, pretty much all the flag locations are really good for infantry fights. The problem is the distance in between them really restricts infantry combat. If you're on foot, it can be a bit of a slog to get to a flag, and if you get to a flag and there's a tank there and you're not a class that can deal with tanks, then you're really going to be in trouble. The one thing I would say for this layout is it is one of those maps that makes you swap class. I often find myself swapping from support to sniper to engineer just to try and get the job done in a particular situation. Engineer is a good choice all the way through for this map because you can take your missile and your DMR and your mines or your repair torch. This is a vehicle heavy map, so being able to deal with vehicles is a good option at all times. But sometimes it's just nice to play support. Occasionally play recon when you're dealing with those pesky recons that are sitting on a hill mile away trying to snipe into your objective. But as I'm someone who loves playing engineer, particularly with the SRAW, this map was kind of ideal for me because you can make incredibly long SRAW shots. Now this is a map where certain missiles and certain tank shells are going to run out of range. And this is probably the first map where the mobile AA makes sense because it can cover one end of the map. You can cover the objectives closest to your base and maybe your end of the island, but that's it. You can't reach out across to the other end of the map. So the scale of this map is probably one of the best limiting factors there is for jets and helicopters and tanks and mobile AA, just because of the distances they have to travel and how spread out across a large map their targets are. You can push a helicopter or a tank up to your opponent's end of the map, but you're not going to have a lot of cover when you're up there and you're not going to have a lot of support. So it is quite risky. That means a lot of the vehicle action is also focused around the centre of the map, so it does draw everybody together even though the map is pretty huge. The map seems to work pretty well for the other large game modes, although Obliteration can be quite a slog. It uses half of the map, so the two teams are effectively on hills overlooking a stretch of water that divides them. It's a very interesting map, but it does lead to some frustrating circumstances when the bomb gets dropped in that water and everybody's getting sniped, rocketed, LMG'd as they try to get it. So this isn't a version of Obliteration where you can do a headlong rush and try and ram the bomb down into the objectives. You do have to flank, get round your opponents. It's a lot more thoughtful than some of the Obliteration maps we've seen in the past. In this clip here, all our squad is doing is trying to defend one flank, and this is nowhere near our objectives, but this is the route they're having to bring the bomb to try and get round and out of the line of fire. Obliteration usually isn't one of my favourite game modes, just because it is just often too confusing, too headlong a rush at objectives. But on this map it seems to work really well. I think some people will find it frustratingly slow for Obliteration, but for me it was pretty much the perfect pacing. If you get a squad that works together well and is prepared to lock down a route and hold their ground on this map, then you can have a lot of fun. I wouldn't say it's going to change my mind on Obliteration, still not a great fan of the game mode, but because at the moment there are servers that are just playing Dragon Valley and rotating the modes, then I can put up with Obliteration and actually enjoy it. The other mode that's worth looking at is Rush. Now this is Rush on a new scale for Battlefield 4. This is the Bad Company 2 scale of Rush. So you end up with 5 pairs of objectives and it works from one end of the map to the other end. So whereas in Battlefield 3 and 4 they've made Rush a shorter, faster paced game mode, this is more of a conquest level, long, slow fight. This does bring a couple of problems. It does feel a lot less focused than the normal version of Battlefield 4 Rush, and that's because the area of the maps is huge. So you might be thinking, well, it's not that bad that it's huge, means you can flank. But these guys that I'm shooting at are 200 metres away from B. But they're not 200 metres in front of it attacking it, they're 200 metres to the side of it. So they're not actually anywhere near the objective, they're just on the map. They're about 200 metres away from where they spawned, so they've moved 200 metres and are still 200 metres away from the objective. That's how big this area is. In fact, this is the conquest spawn for one end of the map. So I think the boundaries could be a little tighter on this version of Rush, and maybe the spawns a little closer to the objectives, but this is really nitpicking. This is how Rush was in Bad Company 2. We're not really used to it in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, and for one Rush map I think we can get away with having huge side areas and a long way to get to the objectives. Anyway, that's my look at Dragon Valley. On the whole, it's a really good map. A few tweaks and I think it'll be perfect. Thanks for watching.